But it does seem there are two stories on Labour tax. One, the one Keir wants to tell you, and two, the one Keir doesn't want to tell you.
And I think the most significant clue in all of this is how much of a fuss they've made about the taxes they're not going to put up. So they've said they're not
Income
going
tax,
to
VAT,
put up.
yeah.
You give a little list there. You can
That
put on
sounds like-
Rachel Reeves's voice. We're not going to, however she does it.
That's right, yeah. It's like the theme tune to Only Fools and Horses, isn't it? No income tax, no VAT, but all the others.
But all the others, yeah. And they are clearly designed to wallop those at the sort of higher end of doing quite well. Yeah. I mean, this is so depressing, isn't it? And it's also so completely boneheaded. So, for example, if you take something like capital gains tax, that kicks in on, for example, second homes. Anyone with more than one property. Admittedly, the vast majority of people feel lucky to have even one property, but there are a lot of people out there, including developers and so on, that have many more than one property. And if they're not struck by corporation tax rises, which I don't trust that there won't be too, they may well be walloped if they try to sell that second property. So what are those people going to do? Are they going to A, sell that property and be absolutely hammered, or B, sit on the property and wait and sit it out and wait? And if it's B, which I think is most likely, because who's going to voluntarily pay a whole load of extra tax, how is that going to help keep the housing market moving, which is number one, right at the heart of what the Labour incoming, probably Labour government has said they want to do.
And underpinning this, I mean, despite all of this, the Daily Mail quite characteristically doing its level best to warn people about what they feel will be the massive tax hikes coming our way if Keir Starmer wins the election. It seems pretty likely, which is why we must discuss a poll that's come out only in the last couple of hours. It's a YouGov MRP poll for Sky News predicting that Labour is on course for a 200-seat majority, and which will leave the Tories with their fewest number of MPs ever.
I mean, is anyone else getting a little bit weary of these polls all saying that Labour's going to do brilliantly? You know, also I've read a lot of polls in the last 24, 48 hours without naming names that are wildly out when it comes to certain particular constituencies that I'm quite familiar with. So, you know, when you follow a campaign closely, you come to have an idea of what's going on in individual seats. And there was a poll out yesterday that predicted that Reform UK could win 7 seats, I think it was, and they named a number of seats that just, you know, are not thought to have a realistic chance at all. And that really undermines the whole thing when they appear to get it so wrong. It's important to say that pollsters have been very wrong before, but equally, you know, when you've got a disruptor party like Reform, which is starting from almost nothing and making very, very fast strides in the overall national polling, it's pretty difficult to gauge. And sometimes the field work for polls has been done, you know, 10 days ago or something. You know, it began 10 days ago, so results aren't that representative. So I realise I'm kind of waffling a bit about the value of these polls, and they are useful. Of course they give us an insight, and I watch them like a hawk as well, but they need to be taken with a pinch of salt.
Indeed, and I also think that they're underplaying what the Tories will call the threat from Reform. I think the Reform's numbers, I don't think it'll translate into that many seats, but I think their numbers might be bigger than people are expecting.
I think that's possible. I mean, there's a really interesting tweet that I flagged up earlier today on Mike Graham's show by George Galloway, and he was saying Reform, Nigel Farage is running away with this election because of the emptiness of the promises from the other two and the rhetoric from the other two parties. And he was saying, he didn't name where it was, but he said in the ward where he had been canvassing, so knocking on doors, or he and his team asking people how they were going to vote, 50% in that particular area said they would vote Reform. Now, the party could still be left with 0 seats. I think it's unlikely. I think Farage
has got to win. Did you see his reception in Clacton?
Was it rock star? I had a bit of FOMO at that. I wanted to be there.
Yeah. Who's arrived here? The Rolling Stones or something? I mean,
it's a man in a tweed jacket.
Yeah. Listen, we're going to go to break in just a second, but very quickly, because I know you were on television with him last night and you had some interesting things to say about him. The billionaire tycoon John Caldwell joining TV dragon Theo Paphitis, all these tycoon businessmen saying, I've had to think about this, and I've always been a very big supporter of the Tories, but I don't know, suddenly I'm beginning to support Labour. Wonder why that is. They're looking for breaks when Labour get in. But let's have a listen to John Caldwell talking to Mike Graham this morning.
If one fraction of the manifesto comes to pass, then I think Labour will have done an excellent job. And if the price for that is VAT on private schools, which I do disagree with, that's crystal clear I disagree with, but if that's one of the negative policies that I disagree with, then that to some extent is a small price to pay for getting everything else on the right pathway.
Well, I like John Caldwell and I respect him a lot, and I like Theo Paphitis as well. Great guys, very successful men, and deservedly so. But if they think they're getting any breaks by saying, I like Keir now, they got another thing coming. He's gunning for them, isn't he?
Listen, he's a billionaire and I am not. So I'm going to listen to him with some respect.
Sure, absolutely.
Some respect, but the reason that he's pivoted in this way, and it's a massive pivot, he was previously supporting Liz Truss, is because he's seen the word growth and he's heard Labour banging on and on and on and on about how they're going for growth. Well, great, we can all sign up to that. What one of us in this country doesn't want a booming economy, because hopefully the spoils of that would be spread across everybody. Unfortunately, it's very unclear how they're actually going to get growth. Just shouting that you're going to get growth doesn't mean you're actually going to achieve it.
Yeah, there's two words that Keir Starmer he's got to the point where I don't think he can actually say any other words. Growth. Change.
Oh yeah, and the industrial strategy.
Change.
You missed out the industrial
strategy, and so on and so forth. Before we go to break, because we've been talking about Nigel Farage, election rules and all that, I have to read out all the candidates in the constituency that Nigel is standing in. That, of course, is Clacton-on-Sea in Essex. They are Matthew Bensalem, Liberal Democrats; Nigel Farage, of course, Reform UK; Craig Jameson, the Climate Party; Tony Mack, Independent; Natasha Osborne, Green Party; Jovan Owusu Nepal, Labour. This is the one I don't like, Heritage Party. It's nothing personal, Tassos, but his name is Tassos Papanastasio. I think that's maybe... It's a vague attempt. Tassos Papanastasio, a Heritage Party; Andrew Pemberton, UKIP; Giles Watling, Conservative. So those are the candidates.